The desert stretched endless under the burning sun, a vast ocean of sand and stone. Heat waves shimmered like restless spirits above the hardpan trail. A hawk circled high, its cry slicing the silence. And there, cutting through the stillness, came a lone rider. Caleb Rowe. He sat tall in the saddle of a rangy bay horse, his shadow long and crooked across the ground. Dust clung to his boots and hat, his shirt browned with trail grit. A rifle was slung in its scabbard, a revolver holstered low on his hip. He carried no banner, wore no badge, just the weight of his own past, and the kind of eyes that had seen more death than most men lived to tell. Ahead, nestled in a shallow basin between red rock ridges, sprawled a town, weathered boardwalks, crooked signs, and a main street wide enough to stage a war. The wind pushed dust devils down its length, rattling loose shutters. Over the entrance arch someone had painted a name in faded white. Redemption Gulch. Caleb slowed his horse. He studied the town like a man reading tracks. There was life here sure enough. Thin, desperate life. A blacksmith hammer rang faintly. A dog barked. But what drew his eye was the two-story building at the center, a saloon, wide balcony, batwing doors yawning open. Piano music just audible over the hum of voices. He nudged his horse forward. The saddle leather creaked as if protesting the heat. By the time he reached the main street, men were already watching him. Lean, hard-eyed ranch hands, a gambler flicking cards under the shade, a pair of drifters leaning on the rail outside the mercantile. Strangers drew eyes in the west, and Caleb had the look of trouble. He dismounted outside the saloon, tied off his horse, and stepped up onto the boardwalk. Inside, cool shade replaced the furnace glare. The air smelled of whiskey, cigar smoke, and sweat. The piano man played a jaunty tune nobody seemed to listen to. At least 2 card games were running, voices low, stakes high. And behind the long bar, polishing a glass with casual grace, stood a woman. She was no saloon girl. Evelyn Hart carried herself with a calm authority that made men think twice before raising their voices. Her hair was dark auburn, tied neatly back, her blouse crisp despite the heat. She had a revolver under the counter. Caleb could feel it without seeing, but her eyes, sharp and assessing, were the weapon she wielded best. When Caleb stepped through the batwings, she noticed him at once. He tipped his hat. "Afternoon, ma'am." Her gaze lingered, weighing him. "You look like the desert chewed you up and spit you out." "Wouldn't be the first time," Caleb said. "Whiskey, if you've got it." She poured him a glass, set it down without ceremony. "We've got whiskey, but we don't give credit." Caleb dropped 2 silver coins on the counter. "Never asked for any." That made her lift a brow, just slightly. Most men swaggered, begged, or gambled for drink. This one spoke plain, paid straight. She liked that. He downed half the whiskey in one swallow. The burn was harsh but familiar. From the far corner, a voice called out, rough and mocking. "Hey, Evie, ain't you gonna give your new friend the house welcome?" A group of ranch hands laughed. The man who spoke, a broad-shouldered fellow with a scar across his jaw, stood and swaggered toward the bar. Evelyn's expression didn't change, though a flicker of annoyance crossed her eyes. "Sit down, Deke," she said coolly. "You've had your welcome." But Deke kept walking, heavy boots thudding on the floorboards. He looked Caleb over with a sneer. "Stray drifter, huh? Thinking he's too good to introduce himself." Caleb didn't move. "Didn't figure you asked." The silence stretched, thick with tension. Evelyn's hand drifted under the bar. Deke's friends shifted in their seats. Finally, Deke barked a laugh. "Ain't worth dirtyin' my hands on some saddle tramp. But you best know, this town don't treat outsiders kindly." He spat on the floor and slouched back to his table. Evelyn released her hidden grip on the revolver. She gave Caleb a long look. "Welcome to Redemption Gulch," she said dryly. Caleb finished his whiskey. "Seems a warm place." Evening in the gulch. By sundown, the town had grown louder. Lanterns lit the saloon, painting golden light onto the street. Outside, dust turned to cool shadows. Inside, poker pots swelled, laughter rose, and whiskey loosened tongues. Caleb sat in the corner nursing a fresh glass, his hat low, observing. He wasn't here to belong, he never was. But something about the saloon's mistress pulled at him. Evelyn Hart wasn't like the painted doves who flitted through the crowd. She moved with the calm certainty of someone who had carved her own place in a world of men. At one point she came over. "You plan on sittin' there all night?" Stranger. Or you looking for work? Depends on the work, Caleb said. Sheriff's always short a deputy. Or the McGraw gang's always short a grave digger. He studied her. You've got a sharp tongue for a barkeep. She leaned closer, voice low but steady. I'm not like other women in this town, mister. I don't simper, I don't flatter, and I sure as hell don't need saving. If you came here looking for that, right on. Caleb's lips curved faintly. That's why I want you. For a heartbeat, she froze. Something unspoken passed between them. Challenge, recognition, maybe even longing. Then she pulled back, masking it with a cool smile. Careful, cowboy. Words like that get a man in trouble. Before Caleb could answer, the saloon doors banged open. 5 men strode in, dust and menace clinging to them. Their leader was tall, whipcord lean, with cold blue eyes that could chill whiskey. His hat brim shadowed his face, but when he lifted it, Evelyn stiffened. Clay McGraw, she said. Caleb caught the flicker of tension in her stance. This was no casual acquaintance. Clay grinned, wolfish. Well now, if it ain't Cousin Evie. Lookin' prettier than a painted wagon. Heard tell you're runnin' this fine establishment since your old man passed. The saloon went dead quiet. Even the piano man faltered. Evelyn's jaw tightened. You're not welcome here, Clay. He spread his hands mockingly. Why, that's a shame. My boys and me, we rode all this way hoping for a drink and a friendly smile. Behind him, his gang fanned out, cans never straying far from their guns. Caleb rose slowly from his corner, chair scraping the floor. Clay's eyes flicked to him, narrowing. And who might you be? Just passin' through, Caleb said. Clay chuckled darkly. Best keep ridin', stranger. Redemption Gulch has got no place for men who don't pick sides. Evelyn's voice cut like steel. He's a customer, that's all. But Caleb could tell. Her words carried a tremor she fought to hide. Clay leaned across the bar, close enough Evelyn could smell the trail dust on him. His smile never reached his eyes. We'll be back, Evie. When we do, this saloon'll be mine. And you'll remember family's thicker than water. He slapped a coin onto the counter, loud in the silence, then turned and strode out with his men. The doors swung shut. The room exhaled. Caleb looked at Evelyn. She was steady, but her knuckles were white on the bar. He set his glass down. You all right? Her eyes hardened. I told you, cowboy. I don't need saving. But the look she gave him, half defiance, half desperation, said otherwise. The night after Clay McGraw's visit weighed heavy on Redemption Gulch. The town wore silence like a shroud, the lamps on Main Street burning low, shutters closed tight against the dark. Folks had seen too many raids, too many graves dug behind the chapel, to sleep easy when outlaws were prowling the hills. Caleb Rose sat on the porch of the saloon, chair tilted back, rifle laid across his knees. The desert wind carried the smell of sage and dust, whispering like old ghosts. He hadn't meant to stay. He never meant to stay anywhere. But something in Evelyn's eyes had caught him. Steel and fire wrapped around a wound she'd never admit. Inside, Evelyn Hart counted the night's earnings with hands steadier than she felt. She had been staring at the door every few minutes, expecting Clay to burst through. The sound of Caleb shifting his chair outside was the only thing that kept her heart from breaking into a gallop. When she finally stepped out, lantern light painting her face in gold and shadow, she saw him there, silent, watchful. You're still here, she said. Caleb shrugged. Town's jumpy. Figured I'd sit a spell. You don't owe us that. No. But trouble's riding your way, and I don't much like turning my back on trouble. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Evelyn crossed her arms, looking out over the dark street. Clay always was mean, even as a boy. My uncle raised him wild, let him run with rough men. By the time he was 15, he'd slit a man's throat over a deck of cards. Now he thinks he owns every trail between here and Santa Fe. And you? Caleb asked quietly. I got out? My daddy made sure of it, built this saloon from nothing. Said if a heart was gonna be remembered in this town, it'd be for standing tall, not riding crooked. I aim to keep it that way. Caleb studied her. In the pale lamplight, her jaw was set hard, but her eyes burned. You're not like other women. She glanced at him, a hint of wryness softening her. I told you that. He tipped his hat brim. And I told you. That's why I want you. Her breath caught. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt the armor around her heart bend. But before she could speak, the night cracked open. A gunshot. The sound rolled down from the hills, followed by the distant thunder of hooves. Caleb stood in one fluid motion, rifle to shoulder. "They're comin'." The raid, the McGraw gang rode in like a storm, 10 men, torches flaring, horses screaming as iron shoes struck sparks on stone. They whooped and hollered, firing into the air, their shadows stretching monstrous against the buildings. The town erupted in chaos. Doors slammed, women screamed, dogs barked wild. Sheriff Amos Tate staggered out of his office, shotgun in hand, his white mustache bristling as he shouted, "Hold it right there." Clay McGraw didn't hold. He reined up in the middle of Main Street, torch held high, grin sharp as broken glass. "Evening, redemption! Time to pay your dues." His men fanned out, smashing windows, overturning barrels, firing shots into signs. One torch arced through the night, shattering against the mercantile porch. Flames licked upward. Caleb took his rifle and dropped the torchman with one shot. The outlaw tumbled from his saddle, torch rolling into the dirt. The street froze. Clay's grin curdled. He turned his horse, eyes narrowing at Caleb, who now stood in front of the saloon, rifle still smoking. "And who the hell are you supposed to be?" Caleb's voice carried, flat and steady. "Just a man who don't like bullies." The gang stirred, hands sliding toward holsters. Sheriff Tate lifted his shotgun. Evelyn stood in the saloon doorway, revolver cocked. Clay spat, "So be it." The first shots tore through the night, gunfight in the gulch, bullets sang. Glass shattered. Horses reared. Caleb fired fast, each shot deliberate. 2 outlaws fell in the dust, their screams drowned by the roar. Sheriff Tate blasted both barrels, dropping another, before scrambling to reload. Evelyn fired from the doorway, her aim deadly steady. She winged a man who tried to flank Caleb, sending him sprawling. The outlaws pressed hard. Clay rode through the chaos like a devil, firing his Colt with both hands, laughing as slugs splintered posts and tore shingles. "Burn it all," he shouted. One torch flew and caught on the saloon's upper balcony. Flames spread fast, dry timber crackling. "Evelyn," Caleb barked. She didn't flinch. "I'm not leaving my place." Caleb shot the man who'd thrown the torch, then seized her arm, dragging her back as the flames chewed upward. "A place can burn. People can't." Her eyes flashed, but she let him pull her into the street. The fight raged. Men fell, horses screamed, fire ate at the town. Sheriff Tate took a bullet in the leg but kept firing, teeth gritted against pain. Caleb fought like a man born to it, his rifle emptying, his revolver flashing. Evelyn stayed at his side, loading, firing, ducking smoke. And then, silence. The street was littered with bodies and wounded men crawling for cover. The mercantile smoked, the saloon balcony roared with fire. Clay McGraw still sat his horse, untouched, gun smoking in his hand. He looked at Caleb across the chaos. "You've got grit, stranger. But grit won't save you." He spurred his horse forward. High noon without the sun, the fight dragged till dawn. By the time the sky paled, Redemption Gulch was half ruined. Sheriff Tate was carried into Doc's office, bleeding bad. The townsfolk whispered of leaving, of packing wagons and abandoning the gulch to McGraw's gang. But Caleb wasn't built to run, and neither was Evelyn. By morning they stood together in the saloon ruins, smoke still curling from the blackened beams. Evelyn's face was streaked with soot, her eyes hollow but burning. "If we don't stop him, this town dies." Caleb checked his revolver, spun the cylinder. "Then we stop him." Word spread fast. Clay had sent a message noon, Main Street. One man to stand for redemption. Caleb stepped forward without hesitation. At the appointed hour, the whole town gathered, pressed against walls and windows. The sun stood high, burning down on the dust-choked street. The silence was so heavy a man could hear his own heartbeat. Clay McGraw strode out, revolver low at his side, grin carved in stone. Caleb Rowe walked to meet him, hat brim shadowing his scarred face, revolver loose but ready. Evelyn stood behind the saloon doors, hands clenched white. Clay's voice carried, "You're a fool, cowboy. This ain't your town, ain't your fight." Caleb's voice was quiet, but it cut the silence clean. "It is now." The clock struck. 2 men moved as one. 2 shots cracked. Dust rose. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Clay staggered, clutching his chest. His revolver fell, clattering to the dirt. He looked at Caleb with stunned hatred, then crumpled into the dust. The street erupted. The townsfolk poured out, shouting, cheering, weeping. The McGraw gang, those who still lived, fled into the hills. Redemption Gulch was scarred, burned, but alive. Evelyn ran to Caleb. For the first time, her guard broke. She seized his shirt front, pulled him close, kissed him hard enough to steal the dust from his soul. When she pulled back, her voice shook. "You could have ridden on. You should have." Caleb touched her cheek, rough hand gentle. "Maybe. But then I'd never have found you." Her eyes softened, wet but fierce. "I told you I'm not like other women." "And I told you," he said, voice low, "that's why I want you." Epilogue. Weeks later, Redemption Gulch had begun to heal. New timbers rose where fire had eaten walls. The mercantile reopened. Sheriff Tate, hobbling on a cane, tipped his hat to Caleb as he passed. The cowboy hadn't left. Not yet. He still rode out on the trails, still carried the quiet weight of a drifter. But every evening he returned to the saloon. Now Evelyn's saloon, rebuilt stronger than before. And each night, when the piano played and laughter filled the air, Caleb Rowe sat with Evelyn Hart, two scarred souls who had chosen to stand their ground. The West was still wild, still cruel. But here, in Redemption Gulch, they had carved something worth fighting for, and maybe, just maybe, worth staying for.